Welcome to this session where we will be taking a look at how CorPeuM can meet the needs of cash forecasting. For any business to survive and grow, it must have three things. First, a clear understanding of the market in which it operates. Second, an effective business model that determines how value is generated. And third, adequate funding in the form of cash. Typically, much of the cash will initially come from investors or provided as loans. But as the business becomes established, that cash will come from existing operations. Therefore, the ability to accurately forecast cash and manage the way in which it is used is essential. The profit and loss view of a business is okay in terms of how the finances are working out. But to make day-to-day operational decisions, it's vital to know whether there's enough cash to carry them out both now and into the future. In the scenarios shown on the screen, the traditional P&L view is the same, but the cash flow that results from each is very different. You can see the reason for this if we expand scenario 2. It all depends on when customers pay for their purchases, when materials are ordered and suppliers are paid for their goods and services, when cash is paid to employees and other vendors, when loans and dividends are repaid, and finally finance charges due to non-budgeted cash deficits, which have a direct impact on the bottom line of the organisation. What is needed is some way to view budgets and forecasts from a cash view that could ultimately lead to better timing of decisions. To do this requires many different kinds of information. Take the example of a manufacturer or service provider. Forecasting cash starts with sales entering forecasts by customer. This forecast is compared with current resources and any under or overstock situations being noted. Next, those responsible for the supply of products and services review the current manufacturing or resource schedule to make sure there's adequate stock of raw materials. Some dialogue may then be required between departments to optimize the organization's ability to serve customers, for example by delaying the delivery of a product or service or increasing production. Once agreed, the cash inflow can then be predicted by referencing individual customer payment terms. Where additional raw materials or external services are required, procurement will then need to order from one or more suppliers depending on availability, price and payment terms. Once settled, the cash outflow from external suppliers can then be generated. To this information, other cash consumers will need to be added. This will include operational departments, financial obligations to investors, and agreed interest or loan repayments to banks. By combining these flows, a cash forecast can then be generated. Out of this, cash may then be put aside for future investments, or where cash shortfalls may occur in certain periods. These processes are not one-time events. They need to occur on a continuous basis where actions between departments are carefully coordinated so that everything that makes up the forecast is done in the right order. Once we have this data, the real power of a cash forecasting system is that it allows management to answer a number of key questions. Questions such as, can we fulfill the sales demand? Do we have enough cash to make changes to production and the purchase of raw materials? How do customer and supplier payment terms affect the availability of cash? And how does this differ from what we had originally planned? By closely monitoring cash in this way, organizations can be sure to make the best use of a scarce and expensive resource. Now, unlike most systems, CorPeuM has three capabilities that enables the flow of cash to be modeled simply and easily, as we're going to see now. First is that CorPeuM holds data as a series of logical data models, each being specific to the data that's available. In this case study, this includes collecting weekly sales forecasts by customer and product, holding customer and supplier payment terms and price, holding the levels of stock for both product and raw materials, and finally we have information on departmental expenses and finance charges. This logical view is exactly the same way in which you set up a CorPeuM application. Next, CorPeuM is able to combine these data models into reporting models, which can be enriched with calculations and new analyses. For example, in producing a cash forecast by referencing customer and supplier payment terms. Finally, CorPeuM has a sophisticated workflow capability that controls what data is to be collected and the order in which it's to be combined and processed to produce a range of reports and analyses. In our case study, there are 4 distinct processes. Initialized forecast sets customer and supplier payment profiles and the current status of material and product stock levels. Much of the data is loaded from production systems and based on current estimates and production schedules. The second process, collect forecast, collects sales forecasts and matches them with the current stock and production levels. Departmental expenses are also collected during this process. Now we have all the data, the third process, adjust forecasts, allows management to make changes to production to meet any shortfall in product stock, which is then used to calculate any additional raw materials required. Raw material stock levels are then shown against the revised forecast, allowing management to make adjustments to raw material purchases. The final process, generate reports, creates two reporting models from the data supplied, one with a complete P&L and the other a cash forecast. From these, reports are run that show a complete profit and loss and cash flow statement, along with the stock levels of both raw materials and finished goods. Reports also compare this to an original budget to show where variances have arisen due to changes in product mix and underlying costs. So let's see these processes in action.